take the North and never give it back.
So that's a good pick. You get the corner. I gotta go bold, right? I gotta go bold for this.
Yeah, she's got some nice long
Welcome
hair.
back to the Unbearable Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Brad Baird. Make sure to like and subscribe if you are out there on Twitter, and also rate the show 5 stars everywhere that you get your podcast. Just search for Unbearable Sports on Spotify, Apple Podcast, you name it. You can download the show. So today, we have to talk a little bit about some of the cuts that were going on for the Chicago Bears, and also the big rumor. If you were on Twitter today, or even like on Instagram, Facebook, you probably saw this rumor about Micah Parsons to the Bears flying all over the place. So as we always do with rumors, we're going to break down the rumor and kind of talk about why is this a rumor, right? Was it something that someone said, or is it more speculation? But then also break down the cap situation. If this is something that would actually happen, how would this look like for the Cowboys? Why would they even consider it? And then also, would the Bears consider it? And last but not least, I'll throw down my opinion as to, do I think that the Bears should ultimately do this if this ends up being true? So without further ado, let's get right into it, because tomorrow the Bears have the official cut downs all the way down at 53. And if you missed it, download the podcast, listen to the previous episode. We talk about my predictions for the 53-man roster, and already, so far, kind of like what we talked about yesterday. So just going through some housekeeping with the cuts. John Jackson and Peter LeBlanc, the receivers, got cut today. Offensive lineman Jatiri Carter and Jerome Carvin got cut today. Defensive lineman Michael DeWarmafor and Jalen Hutchins got released today. Paul Moala and also Javin White got released today. And safety Quindell Johnson. So the Chicago Bears now only have 78 total players, so they need to cut 25 more to get down to that 53-man roster. All these should be announced before 3 o'clock at Central Time, because that is when that window ultimately closes. Now, the only thing that I want to bring up is just Jatiri Carter. I saw some people out there being surprised, and like I said yesterday, that was one of my quote-unquote surprise cuts that I think a lot of people didn't see coming, because you saw him playing on the lower and lower tiers for the Chicago Bears offensive line on that interior. They wanted to upgrade, and ultimately they decided to move on in favor of Bill Murray. I thought Bill Murray has looked really good. We'll see if he ultimately makes that 53-man roster, but also Matt Pryor has been someone that they have trusted at that right guard spot. So that's where I think they're still going to keep Bill Murray and Matt Pryor as those two backup guards. So ultimately, that's my vibe. We'll see what they ultimately do tomorrow, though. So with the roster cuts out of the way, let's talk about this big rumor, okay? So like I said, if you were on social media at all today, and even some of the days before, this whole Micah Parsons rumor has been, Micah Parsons to the Bears has been kind of getting floated around. Now, first off, a little bit about Micah Parsons is Micah Parsons is pretty freaking good. So Micah Parsons has, from a PFF perspective, a 92.7 last year, 91.6 grade the year before that, and an 89.8 grade as a rookie. He tallied over 100 tackles last season, but also these are PFF sack numbers, so they're not exactly like what you see on ESPN or Pro Football Reference. They don't really credit half sacks, but they gave him 16 sacks last season, 14 the year before, and 14 the year before. I mean, all this stuff just kind of shows we know the type of player that he is. 69 hurries last year and 61 the year before that. This is just an absolute game wrecker. And we know this about Micah Parsons. So why is this rumor going out there? Is it something that somebody said? Is it something that is being speculated on? So it's a combination of both, because I think that ultimately this rumor started up because people were saying, well, how can the Cowboys pay for everybody on their team? Because they have some salary cap things coming up, and they have Dak that they need to pay, Brendan Cooks, Zach Martin, DeMarcus Lawrence, and then you also see CeeDee Lamb getting a new contract as well. And I think ultimately this speculation kind of pops around because us Bears fans, we were saying, well, we don't want CeeDee Lamb. Who can we get? Well, Micah freaking Parsons. Let's get him. He still has 2 years on his deal because he has this year and then his 5th year option, which is a fully guaranteed $20 million. Now, fully guaranteed 50-year options are a little weird. He could still be traded and not much detriment to the Dallas Cowboys if that were to happen. But also, then out on Twitter, Billy at White Sox Center tweeted this out. My first time breaking Chicago Bears news ever. From a source in Hallis Hall, I've been told the Bears trading for Micah Parsons is at the 1-yard line. Poles has the assets to make the move. Now, this is something that, no offense to Billy, if you look at his followers, it's less than 1,000. But also, too, I know that I've gotten some inside information every now and again. You don't have to be an absolute, blue check, all this information out there. So this is what made Bears Twitter into a buzz. This is what made everything kind of then kickstart and go even higher, because after the CeeDee Lamb signing, everyone on Twitter was actually, a lot of Bears people on Twitter were already like, oh man, what about Micah Parsons? What about Micah Parsons? And then, this is just what we do as fans. We kind of take it to that next level. And that's ultimately where the rumor is kind of there. So the only person that has said anything is that Billy White Sox. And other than that, it's all speculation of, oh man, wouldn't this be great? Wouldn't this be awesome? Brian Poles, make it happen. But even though that there's a lot of even though that there's more hype rather than sources, right? To me, if you look at why would they even want to trade them? Why exactly would they even want to trade Micah Parsons? It does circle around that whole salary cap situation. Because, hey, when you look at the Dallas Cowboys salary cap, next year, they actually have a lot of salary cap. And I don't think a lot of people know that. Because if you look at them, they have the 5th most salary cap space right now, not including the CeeDee Lamb deal. So they have around close to 75 million. So 74.88 is what SpotRack projects it at. So around 75 million. And then you're assuming that CeeDee Lamb's deal will probably be, in his first year, probably be around 20-ish, definitely in the 20s, maybe closer to the 30 million. So you're talking maybe they're around 50 million or somewhere in the 40s inside of their whole cap space situation. So then you go into, would they re-sign Brendan Cooks? Would they re-sign Zach Martin? Would they re-sign DeMarcus Lawrence? And the big question is Dak Prescott. And we've seen this before with quarterbacks, that they re-sign them and then they shift the money around. And then this is where people's questions kind of come up is, well, with Micah Parsons, how much can he get? Keep in mind, though, he's not going to be a free agent in 2025. He's going to be a free agent in 2026. I don't see a reason why the Dallas Cowboys would want to trade him right now, because they have Dak Prescott, so they could potentially make a Super Bowl run. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense when you think about it for them to trade him immediately right at this moment, especially since he's not demanding a trade. He hasn't been vocal about wanting out of the Dallas Cowboys. So we really haven't seen anything from that perspective. But that's why I wanted to also break down the salary cap, because I don't think people really realize that the Dallas Cowboys actually have a pretty good salary cap situation so far. And also something that I remember seeing, this is even back in like 2010, the Dallas Cowboys typically have a very, I like how they manage their salary cap. And the ideas of they only pay the top people at that position. So they are paying CeeDee Lamb. They will most likely pay Micah Parsons. They pay Zach Martin. They pay Tyron Smith when he was their left tackle. They really just have the top people. And then they actually sign a lot of just kind of random people for like the minimums. So that's really how they build it. They don't have like the DeMarcus Walkers at 10 million and Nate Davis is at 10 million. They really only sign the big deals and then everybody else's smaller deals. So that's just what I've typically seen with just how the Cowboys end up managing their cap. And it does work for them because they do get superstars and they typically keep it. But it's not about that yet. Let's talk about what this would be if, like, kind of what's the price to pay poker? If to play poker, if they want him, what exactly would that price tag be on him? And I think about this like Khalil Mack. Yet again, Khalil Mack was wanting out of Oakland. He wanted a deal, but they were not going to get it done. So they were going to trade him away. Like I said, people don't trade away superstars. You rarely see that. And that's why I think you have to go back to Khalil Mack to say, okay, with Khalil Mack, what did he get? And what did we have to trade for him? Because yet again, this is a defensive player of the year and a 3-time Pro Bowler before he came over to Chicago. And ultimately what the Bears had to give up was we gave up 2 firsts and a third. And then we also gave up a 6. So 2 firsts and a third basically. And what we got back is we got back a second round and also a conditional 5th round pick. So ultimately that's what we kind of gave up. So you can kind of see it and round up and say, okay, we really just kind of gave up 2 ones was really the big deal that we ended up kind of trading away. And ultimately we got Khalil Mack. So that's kind of if that's the price to play, I kind of like that. Like, to be real, that's a pretty good price to then get a superstar. But you can't just factor in the trades. You also have to factor in the money that you do have to pay him. That's why if you're trading for a superstar, your team kind of takes a bigger hit because you're trading away some top capital, and then you're getting somebody that you then have to pay all that money to. So what's the Bears cap space like? And if you look at this, next year, Bears are 9th in cap space currently with $57 million on cap space. And if you think about the Bears that they might potentially have to re-sign, you're not really looking at a lot of people that they would ultimately want to re-sign, except for really just Tevin Jenkins. So that's where I don't see this cap number going down by very much, because really it's just Tevin Jenkins. Other than that, not really any free agents. I don't think Khalil Herbert's going to be back. So that's kind of what the number's going to be. The Bears can afford this. Because if you think about what the Bears could potentially, like what they would be spending on this, what would that look like? Well, Myles Garrett had 5 years, $125, so around $25 million a year. But Nick Bosa most recently signed his deal, and Parsons is more so up there with Nick Bosa, and Bosa got $34 million a year. So you could expect that he's probably looking more towards that Bosa deal than overall with a Myles Garrett deal. So at the $34 million, that is very, very steep. The Bears do have the cap space, and they can maneuver the cap space if they end up wanting to get that deal done, if they were to get it done. Now, my personal take, just to kind of wrap things up, overall, do I think that this is going to happen? I'd be shocked. I'd be amazed. I would be wowed. Because yet again, like I said before, he has 2 years left on his deal. And you better believe that the Cowboys right now are saying, okay, we have Mike McCarthy right now. We have Dak Prescott. We have all these people. We want to see if we can win a Super Bowl this year. Because if they don't win anything with Mike McCarthy, I think he's out. You're going to bring in a new regime. Then you're going to see what the Cowboys want to do the following season. See how Micah Parsons is doing. You don't have to trade him. Like, to trade away a superstar is very rare. To trade away a superstar that's not complaining is very rare. To trade away a superstar that has 2 years left on his deal at a cost-controlled spot that you don't have to get rid of, that's not complaining, that's incredibly rare. So, unfortunately, I don't think it's going to happen. But I want to just kind of entertain it, right? I do want to entertain it because it's fun. As a Bears fan, it's fun to think about this. But also, too, if this were to happen, right? The big if. If this were to happen, I just want to bring some stats up there about where Micah Parsons plays. Because historically, you see Montez Sweat. Montez Sweat plays on the left side. Micah Parsons last year played predominantly on the left side. 239 of his snaps were at lefty end, and 206 were at left outside linebacker, and only 186 were on the right side. So only 186 of his snaps last year were on the opposite side that Montez Sweat would be on. But I do want to throw this out there. The year before that, Micah Parsons played 471 snaps on the right-hand side, which is the opposite of Montez Sweat, and then only 250 or 260 at the left side. So he can play both sides if you want to. He can do that. So I don't think that there's any concern there. But I think ultimately, to wrap this show up, like I said, I don't think it gets done. But man, if he is actually on the open market, to me, you do the deal. That's my take. I know some people out there, it's like, well, it's too rich. It's too much money. Micah Parsons is a top 10 player in this league easily. He's one of the best players. That's why I would be shocked if he ends up leaving. And you think about what happened when the Bears traded for this guy right here, Khalil Mack. We had one of the best defenses out there. And Kyle Long and others said, that team seemed like a Super Bowl team. But ultimately, imagine if Mitch was the guy. Imagine if it was Patrick Mahomes. I know that we've played that game like a couple years ago, where what if the Bears actually drafted the right guy? If they think that they have the right guy at quarterback that you can have for the next 5 years on a cost-controlled deal, why wouldn't you want one of the best defensive players in the league on your defense? And then you have your wide receivers, you have your offense, now your team. You want to take the most advantage of this time window that you do have before you have to pay the quarterback. So to me, I would do it. You know, I do think, yes, how much money does he actually want, I think is a big question. But when you have a game changer like that, you see it with the Chiefs. They have Chris Jones, and if Chris Jones is out there, the entire defense eats. The entire defense goes based on him. Micah Parsons is a force multiplier, not a multiplier. He's the square root. he's the exponent, right? He's the person that not just multiplies, he multiplies. So to me, I think you do it if the price obviously is all right, because I trust Ryan Poles. And if this actually is a legitimate thing that they can actually potentially get him, I trust Ryan Poles to get the deal done and get it with a well-structured deal for sure. So very fun little topic that I just wanted to talk through. But if you're watching out there on YouTube, let me know what you think down below. Also, if you're still watching, thank you so much. Make sure to like and subscribe. And if this is your first time, we got lots of fun Bears coverage for you. And you can download the podcast if you just want to listen or if you want to watch. But fun little rumor show today. Tomorrow, we will be live to break down the Bears 53-man roster. I'll see you there. And with that, Unbearable Sports Podcast, we are out.
Yeah, she's got some nice long hair, and you know that she's a